Hi, this is Kevin at the Virtual Planetarium at Raritan Valley Community College. Welcome to our weekly Star Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the upcoming solar eclipse on June 10th. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about our upcoming moon phases. We have a last quarter moon on June 2nd. We have a new moon coming up on June 10th. This is when we're going to have our solar eclipse. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then we have a first quarter moon on June 18th. But actually, before we talk about the solar eclipse, let's talk about the lunar eclipse that just happened on May 26th. In case you missed it, I'm going to put the link for the video again in the description, and you can check out the really cool live stream right here. A really neat thing about eclipses are the pictures that come out of it. Here we have a picture. It was actually the astronomy picture of the day on May 27th. We see the moon over here on the right as it's starting to disappear in the Earth's shadow when it's rising, and then it turns to the blood red moon when it's a total lunar eclipse, and then it starts growing again as it comes out of the Earth's shadow. This is actually a combination of 22 separate pictures. I'm going to put the link for this in the description as well. This is the astronomy picture of the day, so there's also great information under there as well you can check out and learn more about the picture. Now, like I mentioned, on June 10th is when we have the solar eclipse happening. Once again, we're going to be using the website timeanddate.com. I'll put the link for this one in the description as well. We have our location set for Somerville in New Jersey because that's close to where we are. And this is not going to be a total solar eclipse. It's going to be what's called an annular solar eclipse. And it's actually going to be happening as the sun is rising. So the eclipse will start before the sun rises for us here on the East Coast. So here we have a neat little video showing that the sun is rising. Then as it's rising, the eclipse is already at maximum, so at 5:30 in the morning is when we're going to see most of the sun covered. And then as the morning goes on, the moon is going to be moving off the face of the sun. This part is going to go until about 6:30 in the morning, so if you're up at this time of the morning, you should definitely check out this solar eclipse that's happening. But like with any solar eclipse or with anything having to do with the sun, you should never look at the sun directly with your eyes without proper protection because you can very easily blind yourself. If you still have some of those leftover solar eclipse glasses from the 2017 eclipse, you should use those to look at the sun safely, or if you have other solar filters as well. Normal sunglasses will not work because they're just not dark enough to make it safe to look at the sun, so you should never use those to look at the sun directly. If you don't have any eclipse glasses, you can always make your own pinhole projector, and this is actually very easy. You can just poke a hole in the middle of a piece of paper. The smaller the hole, the better, and then use that to cast a shadow. You can cast a shadow either on the floor or on a wall. Since this sun is going to be very close to the horizon, you might find it easier to cast a shadow on a wall. But then in the shadow of the paper, the sun is actually going to shine through the pinhole and you'll be able to see the shape of the sun during the eclipse. So that'll be pretty cool. Now, like I said before, this is going to be an annular solar eclipse, and that means that the sun is not going to be completely covered by the moon. So we have three different types of solar eclipses. We have a partial eclipse, which is actually what we're going to see here in New Jersey. The sun is going to be partially covered by the moon. Then we have an annular eclipse, and that happens when the moon is a little bit smaller than the sun in the sky, and you can still see the outer edge of the sun right here. And then we have total solar eclipses where the moon is big enough to completely cover the sun in the sky. Here we have what a total solar eclipse would look like. You can tell that the moon's shadow is completely covering the sun, but you can see the sun's corona around that afterwards. And then the annular solar eclipse, here we have a picture of that, and again you have the disk of the moon covering the sun, but the outer edge is still visible. Now, why do we get these different types of eclipses? These two types of eclipses happen because the moon is actually not at the same distance from the Earth every time. So the moon's orbit is not perfectly round, and that means that sometimes the moon is a little bit closer to the Earth and sometimes it's a little further away. So when it's a little closer to the Earth, it looks bigger in the sky, and that means that it can cover the sun entirely. When that happens, we get a little setup just like this, and we see that the moon's umbra, the darker shadow right here in the middle, is actually reaching the Earth. And if you're in the middle of that dark shadow right there, you get to see a total solar eclipse. If you're in the outer shadow here, you just see a partial eclipse. Now, an annular eclipse happens when the moon is a little bit further away from the sun, and it's not quite as big as the sun in the sky. When that happens, we're actually in a third shadow right here called the antumbra. And there's actually a better picture to further explain this. So here we have another visualization for the antumbra. And it happens when you have a really big light source and then something smaller casting a shadow. So here we have the inner shadow right here is the umbra. If you were in the middle here, you would see a total eclipse. But when you're out here in the antumbra, you see an annular eclipse. And you can tell right here how we can see the basketball covering most of the light bulb, but you can still see the outer edge of the light bulb. Whereas with the total eclipse, the basketball is actually bigger than the light bulb, in this case a flashlight, so it completely covers the light bulb. So that's when we get the total eclipse of the sun. And then lastly, a partial eclipse happens when we're only in the penumbra of the sun, and that's because the moon is partly covering the surface of the sun, but the rest of it is still shining light on us, and that's why we don't get as dark of a shadow. Thank you so much for joining us today for this video. Hope you learned something new. Definitely try to check out that solar eclipse if you're up at that hour. If not, you should try to get up, and always look at the sun safely. If you have solar eclipse glasses, you should definitely use those. And if you don't, you can always make a pinhole projector. You can Google instructions on how to make a pinhole projector, and that'll make it a great way to safely enjoy the solar eclipse. If you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Every week we're going to be putting out a new video about astronomy. And thank you so much, and hope you have a great week.